Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I would like to welcome everyone to our series, Seeds of Knowledge, for the Solitude Center for Spiritual Living. I am so happy to be here. And just so you can tell, our series, Seeds of Knowledge, airs on Sundays, and there's a variety of topics, and we come on the first and the third week of the month. But today, we're here to speak about what seems to the majority of the people a very difficult topic: death. And quite frankly, this is considered one of the most delicate and transformative experience within a family. And let's just think about it, right, Glaucio? When someone returns to the spiritual dimension, we we feel not only this physical absence, but also the emotional, psychological, and actually spiritual bonds that connecting us are deeply impacted. But anyways, I'm not going to talk about the topic of today, Klaus. I'm
You can
here.
you can keep going. You're doing great. Keep going.
I'm here to introduce you for everyone. Glaucio, thank you so very much. It's quite an honor to have you with us. And this is an interesting topic, right, Glaucio? This is a presentation that Glaucio is basing on the quite small book called The Family Constellation, written by the Spiritist author Joanna de Angelis, with close collaboration with Divaldo Pereira Franco. And this is on chapter 26, I believe. So, Glaucio, please help us deconstruct this myth that death is bad, right? But also leads us to understand perhaps that grief, the process of grieving, is beyond that individual experience, but it's part of a systemic experience as well. So, Glaucio, take it away, and I'll be back at the end of your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Marcia. Thank you for presenting, for introducing me. Yeah. So, disincarnation in the family. So the first point that we need to have in mind, before we start any conversation about disincarnation, is that the process of rebirth, birth, right? Or in the case, rebirth in the physical realm, life, from a physical standpoint, and the death of the physical body, they're inevitable because they are biological imperatives. So here, our bodies, being the biological machines that they are, they go through a cycle, and it is a cycle that, like all machines, at some time they're going to break down. Our body is no different, and our body has a purpose. In this case, as human beings, we reincarnate on, in our case here, planet Earth, or in any other planet, depending on our necessities and our evolution. But our physical body has a purpose, and it is a tool for us so that we can interact again. We're immortal spirits, we are spiritual, but we need this particular tool here to interact with the physical universe. So the body is going to disintegrate. Once the purpose of a reincarnation is fulfilled, that body, that tool, is no longer needed. An interesting thing, though, is that when is it that is going to happen? There is no pre-established rule for the death of the physical body. It can happen very sudden. The physical body is very fragile, so our discarnation can be very sudden, or can also be very gradual. It might impact a young person or an old person. might infect somebody who's healthy. It might be that somebody who's healthy today might disincarnate soon, and it might happen that, of course, to somebody who is ill. So regardless of it is a biological, it is um, a normal process of the physical realm. However, regardless of what it does leave an emotional trace in every family, in every home. It produces anguish, disturbance sometimes, but also relief or peace as well. So, as human beings, we have an emotional connection, we have emotional bonds with one another. And in our physical experience, depending on the circumstance, that process of discarnation is going to impact each one of us in a different manner. According to the Spirit's book, question 68, so uh, the Kardec asks, and actually 68a. So Kardec asks the Spirit, would it be correct to compare death to the end of a movement in a broken machine? Yes, and the spirits indicate that when the machine is out of order, it stops working. So when the body becomes ill, life withdraws from it. However, sounds very academic and simple to an extent. However, instinctively, we we are prone to oppose death. So we have this ancestral instinct for survival. We have we have been programmed to remain alive, to fight. Our ancestors in the physical, in the process of biological evolution, they fought to survive, despite all the adversities and all the hazards of the world that were around them. So it is this distinct of survival. It's very important. It is innate to us. So it is something that it is, that is imbued to us. That's why, regardless of the circumstance, we're always going to go to fight back. As a matter of fact, our body is resilient to the process of death and the process of breaking down. So whenever we face it, we try to overcome it somehow. We try to take uh, we try to take a posture that keeps us alive. And why is it important? Because just because we're spiritual, just because we're spirits and we're using the body, that does not mean that the body is not important. The body is super important for us because the body allows us to have a material experience, and in that material experience allows us to evolve. So that's the first part here that we see in our home, the need, the necessity for us to communicate with us, communicate amongst us as families, with our children, and to start inculcating in our loved ones that, um, again, to overcome these mythological archetypes that generate these disturbing images. If we do not, the lack of understanding of death, that's what generates phobias, anxiety, depression, and emotional conflicts. Again, not to say that an emotional reaction to the disincarnation of a loved one is something unnatural. No, it is something natural. And again, each one of us is going to behave in a different manner depending on the circumstances. However, there are, there are factors that might complicate that in our families. There's are factors that are going to complicate us amongst those of our relationship. Again, if I'm and I'm so afraid of death, that makes it difficult. Also, that I'm afraid, I have a phobia of death, anxiety as well, depression, and emotional conflicts. Again, those we can understand to an extent. However, there is a point in which those might be detrimental. And again, having the lack of communication amongst our loved ones, it makes those that process harder. We see here, especially with our children, make sure that our children, as they are growing up, that is inculcated in them that mom and dad are not going to be there forever, that grandpa and grandma, who we love so much, are not going to be there, auntie or uncle, and they're not going to be there forever. But the important thing again is having this spiritual connection, this spiritual understanding that allows to start with the children, but again with the family as one, as a whole, and the loved ones, to understand that it is something that is going to come to all of us. In the Spirit's book, question 941, Kardec asks, the fear of death perplexes many. Where does this fear come from in people if they have before them the whole future? So that applies to all of us. So again, disincarnation can strike anyone at any time. And again, a lot of times people who are healthy, they're so afraid to disincarnate. Sometimes people who are young, they're so afraid to disincarnate. And sometimes also individuals who are at a more advanced stage physically, at age, they are older physically speaking, they're so afraid of disincarnating. And again, people who are also very ill, they might be so afraid. And the spirits explain that this fear is misplaced. But what do you expect? People have been thoroughly brainwashed since childhood to believe in heaven and hell, and who have retained this belief along with the notion that most likely they will go to the latter, because whatever belongs to human life is a mortal sin for the soul, are understandably fearful. So that's excuse me. That's one circumstance. That's the circumstance in which someone was who grew up with a religious upbringing and have a fear of going to a bad place, of being in a bad situation in the spiritual world. And why is that we think that? It is very, I mean, it's not, it's easy for us to realize that we make so many mistakes all the time. And if we're being fair to ourselves, if we only had one chance, one goal here on Earth, and we disincarnating after that one goal, we would not have a good reward because again we make so many mistakes. Now there's a flip side, who are also the people who are, however, most people who are indoctrinated at an early age manage to throw it aside when they grow up. That means if they are capable of forming a little judgment, they become atheists or materialists because they are unable to accept it. Thus, the natural effect through unintentional of such teaching is to make people believe that there is nothing beyond this present life. People who persist in their mistaken childhood beliefs fear eternal fire that burns without destroying. Many parents refuse to discuss death with children. So we see here also that the flip side is that now, yeah, I know that I make so many mistakes, so most likely I'm not going to be in a good place after I disincarnate. So why believe in anything? So now I'm going to believe the opposite, that nothing's going to happen to me. That once I disincarnate, then that's it. It's game over. There's no continuity, which is also it's something that's always very depressing because that means that I will be no more. The love, once I'm gone, my loved ones will no longer have access to me, and we will never meet again. So, so you see these two sides here that none of them are very reassuring, and they just cause more anxiety, more fear, more phobia, and more emotional conflicts. Because on one side, I know, hey, I'm making so many mistakes, that it's no use. After I disincarnate, I'm gonna go to a bad place, or you know what, I'm gonna go to a bad place anyway. So why waste my time trying to be a moral person? And that's why we see the importance of the concept of reincarnation and the fairness of it all. Because now, if I understand that I will be with my loved ones when I come back, actually, if I'm going to be with my loved ones in the spiritual world, most importantly, if the love that we have for one another, that will, well, go on, it is so important. It's so reassuring. And again, it helps us with the concepts of the fear, and again, the anxiety, the stress of thinking about incarnation, because there's nothing to think about. I know that, hey, if I disincarnate, then well, if as a family, if a family member disincarnates, that means that sooner or later we're going to be reunited, and because again, those bonds of affection, of respect, of love, they will move on. So, what Joanna clarifies to us as a solution, again, is the importance of education and dialogue in the family. And first of all, include these conversations about death in the family from early childhood. Start having conversations with our children about it, not in a scary manner, not in a macabre manner, but on the contrary, in a very natural manner, indicating that, hey, listen, mom and dad are not going to be here forever. Grandpa, grandma, they're not going to be here forever, but that's okay because our love is eternal. We are eternal spirits, and whatever that seed of love that we have, those bonds, they are not going to go away. On the contrary, they are going to continue, and they're going to expand even more uh, as in future reincarnations and even in the spiritual world. And have also a treated with naturality, which is kind of hard, but it's like any topic in life. We talk to our kids, especially with our kids, about about sports and development, education, college, careers. So also touch, talk about disincarnation as well. Make our children, and not just our children, again, our loved ones, again, all those are part of the family constellation. Make them aware that love goes on. Again, that nobody, that death does not bring to us the end of everything, and none of us is going to be in a bad place, right? Because there's no concept of quote unquote hell. There are phases that we go through as disincarnate, but again, depends on our level of attachment. So again, the more again we talk about the need for us to be disconnected from the material, the better for us. So again, the concept of death as a physiological interruption, but not as destruction. So again, going back to the question 921, that refers to it. I'm sorry, question 68, that refers to it as a machine that is not going to, that just breaks down, it stops working. So our body is like that. But again, the spirit who is the operator of that machine, that spirit lives on, and it's going to have other opportunities to manifest itself in both the spiritual world and eventually in the material world with reincarnation. And also demystify any kind of superstitious fantasies and ritualisms. And that's kind of tough, especially right nowadays with all the access of media, not only social media, but media in general that all of us have access to. And of course, the family members. And there's so much disinformation that we receive about those loved ones who discarnate, who move on to the spiritual realm. So again, no need for that. I mean, clarify again, it's a natural phenomena, and you know, And the most important thing is, again, is uh, to keep the love, keep an open heart to those who go away. The same way that we welcome with open hearts to those who reincarnate and who are welcome to the family when they reincarnate. And the most important thing also is the importance of the ethical, moral values also in relation to our in relation to our spiritual reality. And I dare say that's the most important aspect of this conversation. Of course, we're going to talk about, hey, yeah, let's talk about this incarnation of family. But most importantly, let's talk about what is it that you're going to be doing during your reincarnation. So we're going to spend, I don't know, 10 years on Earth, 20 years, 30 years, 40, 50, 60, 70, some of us 100 years here in our reincarnations. The most important thing is how is it that we utilize that time? How is it that we utilize that gift that we have to be reincarnated? And so understanding that our moral attitudes, making sure that our actions during that time they reflect the Christian, the spiritist values that we need to inculcate. Very importantly, like the saying goes, people are not going to remember you for your titles, for your academic achievements, for your professional achievements. I mean, people are going to remember you by your how you treated people. That's what people are going to remember you for. People are going to remember how what you did, how compassionate you were. So think about all the famous individuals in the world. Could be in government, could be philosophy, could be science. They were always reminded for their contributions and a whole lot more than many titles that they have. Think about, for instance, the Roman emperors. So the Roman emperors, they were known as Roman emperors, but they were more associated with the actions that they take during their time, the good and the bad. So the same way, us here, what really matters is, I mean, even though it's very important for us to be successful here on earth and to do well and to learn and to have experiences here on earth. But the most important thing, again, is what is it, the values that I bring about, what kind of attitude that I have. So, again, important for us to inculcate that in our children, and also important to remind ourselves in the family group as well, regardless of age, of the importance of having this ethical and moral attitude. And there was an excerpt here from the Spirit's book from question 941. And basically, the Spirits, they explain to us that spiritually minded people who have raised themselves above the artificial wants created by the passions experience a joy that is unknown to the carnally minded, even in this lower life. So it's kind of like interesting for us to have this concept that I can be here on earth regardless of where I am. And when you talk about even this lower life, being again, the planet Earth is a planet of third category. So it is really lagging. I shouldn't say lagging behind, but we still have a lot to go. So if you reincarnate on Earth, most definitely you still have a long way to go to reach perfection. So I mean, this is one of the lower order spirits. But again, if you have this spiritual mind, that's going to help you then to be above the artificial and material passions and start experiencing a joy, a happiness that goes above just the material. And the spirits continue explaining that the moderation of their desires, again, of these spirits that are spiritually minded, calms their spirits and give them serenity. Happy in the good they do, life has no disappointments for them, and it upsets glide over their consciousness slightly without leaving any painful impression. It's kind of excuse me, need more water. It's kind of interesting for us to see here that this mentality gives us serenity, this moderation of the mind gives individuals the serenity that they need, and because they are more concerned about doing good, more concerned about doing what is morally correct. And if that's your focus, then life is going to be full of disappointments, because again, this is a planet of trials and atonements. That's the name of the game. The name of the game is it is a tough world to live in. But if I am somebody who is less concerned about the things that I don't have here on earth, if I'm less concerned about the challenges that I have, and I'm a lot more focused in doing what's right and helping others, then I'm going to be gliding over these, lightly over the any kind of painful impression that negative experiences might give us here on Earth. So there's a very interesting book by Joanna the Ângelis as well, which is called the Integral Man, and it deals a lot with that. Deals a lot. There's a very interesting passage when Joanna is talking about loneliness, and Joanna explains to us that people who are charitable, people who are altruistic, they tend to not feel lonely even if they're by themselves, because again, they don't feel lonely because they're connecting with others in some other ways. So even though that individual, he or she might be by material terms, be by himself or herself, there's no loneliness in their hearts, because again, there's this connection, there's this bond that he or she is establishing with others by doing good, by being charitable. And conversely, somebody who is so selfish, he or she might be surrounded by people and still feel a lonely heart, because again, it is all about himself or herself. So there's no true connection with the whole. So it's very interesting for us to have this concept that again and again inculcate that in our children and remind one another about that. Not only remind one another about that in our family relationships, but also experience that. Because one thing is also for us to talk about it every day, right? And read, let's say, read question 141 to our family members every day. And that becomes an academic exercise, an intellectual conversation. But the most important thing is for me to practice it. Is for me to actually, starting with the family, for instance, to be charitable and to be moral and to be spiritually minded as I interact with my family members, to again foster this kind of mindset within that small cell of the society. So now let's move on. Let's take a step back and talk about the spiritual perspective. So, from a spiritual standpoint, we are spirits. That's that's who we are. We're the intelligent principle of the universe. So, our true home is the spiritual world. Here on Earth, our physical experience is an opportunity that we're having to grow. It's an opportunity that we're having for development. And it's important for us to have not to have this not to have this concept internalized in us, and somehow and also make sure that we communicate to those now, not to our family members, not just in words, but especially in our attitudes, that the process of death is a process of transition, but not an end. So when the physical life it stops, when the machine that is the body stops working, it is a transition. It is a time of our of the spirit transition back into the spiritual realm, which again is our true our true home. So it is not the end, and the this knowledge of immortality, it transforms the way we relate with death, and especially because it shows us that our bonds, they extend beyond our biological connections. Our biological connections are, they play a role, but they're not the only, and they're not the most significant. In the Gospel according to Spiritism, Kardec does point out that there is the spiritual family, and are those spirits that have affinity, and in the spiritual realm, they form families. And there is the families by the material bonds, which are our material families here. And one and the other, they are not necessarily connected. Now, the important thing is, as we reincarnate and we make part of material families, then we establish connections with new spirits, even those who were not initially part of the spiritual family. And then, hopefully, depending on how of our attitude, and we're going to end up adding more loving souls, more spirits that are bound to us, to our spiritual family. And in a sense, and that's why Kardec tells us that with reincarnation, this spiritual family, it strengthens. The material family goes away at the end of our material experience, but the spiritual family, it goes on, and becomes stronger, because as we are evolving, again, we strengthening the bonds of love with one another. And again, there's always more additions to our spiritual family. And by the way, our spiritual family, it is truly all, it's humanity, which is all the spirits of the whole universe. So we have this huge spiritual family, even though we're not able to feel the connection yet. But yeah, the all those spirits in the whole universe, they're all part of our family. Speaking of the gospel according to Spiritism, yeah, and again, chapter 4. So, item 18, and again, family ties are not destroyed through the reincarnation, as some would believe. On the contrary, they become stronger and closer. And the opposite principle would, on the other hand, certainly destroy them. Meaning that, yeah, so if we do not have, if we have reincarnation, then the family ties, they just we get closer to those who we love again, because we're going to have opportunities to come back together and experience together and fight together and overcome the odds together. And again, there's going to be more, other spirits we're going to get to meet as well. And as we evolve, we become a tighter group of people. Now, the concept that we only live once, that once the body, that we only have one opportunity to incarnate, then it's the opposite, because once it's done, and then we do not have a chance to come back again, and to live together again, and to experience again. So So with that said, what are the benefits? Some of the benefits of spiritual education in the home. Of course, starting with the children, but again, talking to one another. The first benefit is that death loses its destructive force in family dynamics. So we no longer, as we have a spiritual concept or a spiritual mentality, then we have less of this perspective that, hey, we lost a loved one. That means that our family has been shattered, or our family has been weakened, or that family is not the same. No. So by having this concept of a spiritual life, and that our love goes on, is of the contrary. We know that, hey, our family member passed away, but our love continues, and that individual is now still with us, but connected with us in a different dimension. And also, farewells become moments of respect, tenderness, and gratitude. So it's interesting because I shouldn't even say farewell. So I can say now becomes so long, right? Or see you later. And it becomes moments of respect for the contributions of that individual to our family, tenderness, and remembering the good moments. And sometimes the bad moments too, because they make part of the experience, and have gratitude towards that family member who passed away. The beauty of a family is that all of us contribute in our different, depending on our different abilities and our conditions. So be grateful to whatever the circumstance that there was that family member, what it has given. And again, it's not a goodbye. It is a see you soon. And especially for children, I shouldn't say in developing minds, prevents installation of emotional conflicts in developing minds. So which is not just for children. I like the use of the term developing minds because, of course, applies to children, applies to teenagers, but our minds are always developing, that's for sure. So again, having this level of a mature view of reincarnation helps also with the emotional impact because, yeah, that the family, needless to say, is going to have a very strong emotional impact. But having this spiritual insight helps us with any kind of emotional conflicts and alleviates the emotional pain as well. And and with that comes also the emotional health as well. Grieving, by the way, grieving is a very important aspect as we deal with disincarnation of a family member. We have to go through the process of grieving, um, uh, but it becomes problematic. It is a temporary process, but it becomes complicated once it goes from being a temporary process to a permanent process. If somebody's in a permanent process of grief, then it then becomes a health concern for that particular individual. So again, having this spiritual, having the spiritual knowledge helps us with that as well. Um, so I live in Georgia, and Georgia was deeply impacted by the Civil War. And one big issue that happened in the 19th century is that women they were forced to grieve. So if you lost your husband, in this case, if you lost your husband during the war, you were forced to wear black for many years. And there was, I believe it was, I don't know if the standard was 5 years or 7 years. You were supposed to be grieving, even though you're trying to move on. You're forced to be grieving for your husband if he passed away. And of course, there was the culture, it was the understanding of society back then. We're no longer in that society. We should not force ourselves to be grieving. Of course, the grieving process has to be natural, and we should not feel guilty for not grieving enough. We only gonna grieve sufficiently for the loss of the loved ones. And of course, the spiritual education it's going to reduce any kind of revolt, despair, and feelings of unfairness, right? So because they all go together. I get rebellious because I'm going to think, hey, why did this happen to somebody, my uncle, my father, my brother, my sister, and feeling of despair as well. Going, okay, that individual passed away, so what happens now? I lost that love forever. No, that loved one's still there, still exists, but again, it is in a different realm. And also, of course, the feelings of unfairness. And this is very important, especially if you have, if you not only have the understanding of the spiritual life, but also the understanding of reincarnation. because this whole concept of this is fair or this is not unfair, this is fair or this is unfair, it completely changes because now we what seems to be unfair to us, if you put in the concept of reincarnation behind it, then we start thinking that maybe there is a reason behind it. It's just I cannot see it from this life, but from a previous one. And most importantly, it prepares us for our own transition as well. So we're going to transition. There's like the old saying goes. I believe it comes from Thomas. I believe Thomas Jefferson used to say that the only two things that are for sure in our life is that we're going to pay taxes and we're going to disincarnate. So even though we may not always be ready to pay our taxes, but at least we can be ready to have the transition of disincarnation again, having a a better knowledge of what's going to expect to us. Kind of like whenever we go to a foreign country, we before we visit any foreign country or foreign land or a place we have not been there before, we go and we read the guide of that particular place so that once we get there, we're not lost, right? And we know exactly what to do. So the same thing, having this spiritual education helps us, the spiritual knowledge. It's not that we're going to be foolproof when we disincarnate. There's no guarantee for that. But at least we're going to get better prepared when our own time comes. And again, it's a natural phenomenon. It might come to us very soon. It might come to us way down the road. But again, doesn't matter. We all make the transition, and all of our loved ones in our family, in our mature family, they make the transition as well. I like here also that Joanna talks about a practical way for us to go about it, because Joanna reminds us to make immortality part of natural conversations. Talk to our children, but also talk to one another about, hey, the spiritual world is there. We, of course, we live in a material world. We have to discuss our challenges here that we face on Earth. But let's talk about our spiritual reality as well. Let's have conversations about spiritist books that we've read, about spiritist messages about the spiritual world. Let's talk about those too. And so again, always making sure that we always remind ourselves and remind our family members that again, this is not the true realm. That the spiritual realm is our true home. And also very important as well, have open discussion. I like this chapter because it focuses a lot on having a conversation, but having a conversation about any kind of our purposes here on Earth, our struggles, and our testimonies as well. Talk to one another. Talk about the things that, from a moral standpoint, that we did that we know were right, and also talk about those mistakes that we make as well. And again, always having the frame of mind that we're here on Earth to experience the material reality, but that our true purpose here as spirits is to evolve and to become better. Also have a conversation about fear and avoid giving this sentiment of fear to death, imprinting fear in the process of death, and especially, but more of an understanding, like we discussed before. It's going to be a transition we are going to make. Our bodies are machines. There, at some point in time, they're going to break down. And also see them as a temporary separation. If it happens, and again, it can happen to anyone, but again, have this view of it as something temporary and which are part of our evolutionary program. And try to maintain hope. I like this point here. Maintain hope during difficult times. Again, I can be talking to my children. I can be talking to my spouse. I can be talking to my other family members about the spiritual world and the fact that we're here to evolve. But then when difficulty strikes, then I should put that knowledge into practice. And again, not as a show, but especially most importantly in my attitude. Is the famous not talk the walk, but walk the talk. I mean, again, if I'm studying spiritism, if I'm studying Joanna, if I'm studying the publications by Kardec, and so many other great publications about spiritism, that's awesome. But the most important thing is to put those in practice when the tough times are around. So again, as I do that, I am going to make myself stronger and getting myself better prepared for a spiritual transition. And also, I'm going to be inculcating in my family, other family members as well, the idea that, hey, everything that is here is temporary. The good times, the bad times, the challenging times. And again, we're here. Whatever happens is a lesson for us. And again, the joyful moments and the challenging moments as well. So, if I now I'm just about done. Basically, I'm pretty much done. But I'd like to just remind a very key takeaway from chapter 26 of the book Family Constellation. That again, the concept that life is inextinguishable, and uh, and it develops in stages, and life is both in and beyond the body, and it is real and victorious over death. So that's the concept for all of us to always have in mind, and especially have in mind, start with ourselves. I mean, of course, I can be teaching my children, I can be talking to my family members, to my spouse, again, to all my other family members all day long about the importance of the spiritual world, spiritual, they have a spiritual mentality. But the most important thing is, again, is to have it inculcated in my mind and show it in my actions. So again, uh, we are here. We have one life, which is a spiritual life, but we're going to have several existences in our reincarnation. And no matter what happens here, no matter what happens to us, anything, and that's my little alarm. Sorry about that. Anything that happens to us is temporary, and it's a lesson, it's an opportunity to learn. And and again, this incarnation is transitory, but the love that we feel for one another, it lives on. So with that, that's pretty much what I'd like to talk about today.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Glaucio. Thank you so much, everyone who's been here with us today, listening. Some very important discussions, right? We're talking about death. We're talking about also grieving and that grieving process. What does it look like to me, to you, to all of us? And I think, Glaucio, my takeaways are perhaps the importance of acknowledging and honoring those who have departed from our lives, right? Also, the healing role of love, forgiveness, and even that spiritual understanding of what are the bonds between us and our loved ones. And as you said at the end, how the awareness of the immortality, the certainty of the immortality of the soul really brings us comfort and a sense of meaning to those moments when you're grieving that nothing makes sense anymore. So thank you, Glaucio. I really appreciate this. And Glaucio, I would like if you would be so kind as to perhaps close today's discussion with a prayer for everyone.
Sure thing, Marcia. Um, let's take this moment to connect with our spiritual benefactors and thank for all that life has to offer to us. Even though we are spirits in the material world, it is such a blessing for us to be here on earth, to be having experiences with our loved ones, with our families, with our friends, and even with those who consider themselves our enemies. Those experiences are important as well. It's important for us to live in society, to experience victories and also experience disappointments, experience the process of reincarnation of loved ones that come to participate with us of these experiences, and also the disincarnation of those who have fulfilled their missions and are moving on to better realms. May we have, may the teachings of Spiritism make us wiser and stronger, regardless of those circumstances. And may we see every moment, every experience that we go through as an opportunity for learning and growth. That is our main purpose here. And as we grow, we are so much stronger, so much better if we grow together with our loved ones. Thank you. So be it.
So be it. Thank you. Thank you, Glaucio. Thank you, everyone. And until next time.